Hello and welcome once again to the Overcome Yourself podcast. As you know, I am Nicole. I'm so excited to be here today with Dr. Erika. And Dr. Erika, well, she's got a lot going on. So I'm not going to butcher what she's got going on. I'm going to go ahead and allow her to introduce herself. So Dr. Erika, please take it away. I'm so excited to be talking to you today.
I am glad to be here with you and your listeners. I am a fierce authenticity advocate and an energy-inducing consultant, I guess is maybe the best way to do it. So I work in professional development primarily, and I look at the way that teams and individuals can leverage who they are to get where they want to go.
I love that. And we were talking a little bit about neuroscience. So can you tell me a little bit about your background? Because I know we're going to jump into this.
I'm all over the map, right?
Yeah, so you gave me a disclaimer. So let's do the disclaimer here.
So I'm a non-linear thinker, which means I take concepts and ideas from various areas and I put them together in ways that are useful to my clients and my audience base. For me, what that has converted into is a lot of energy spent looking at and partnering with neuroscience researchers and converting what I learn from and with them. I do not do neuroscience research, but I take what they're learning and I convert it into content that is useful for folks in all sorts of different professional development ways. So I work with leaders on how we can leverage what neuroscience tells us about satisfaction to create cultures of satisfaction for ourselves, for our teams, and for our organizations. That's one space that I use neuroscience, but I look at lots of different pieces. I love neurotransmitters. I have favorite neurotransmitters, which is super nerdy. But I talk a lot about what does serotonin do? What does oxytocin do? What is dopamine for? And what happens when we know more about those neurotransmitters and put it to use in our professional spaces?
That is awesome, Dr. Erika. We're probably going to need several episodes because I know this is going to get really good. Okay, so in the little thing that you answered for this episode, I asked if overcoming yourself had anything to do with your journey, and you mentioned that it wasn't so much overcoming yourself as it was embracing yourself. Yeah. And that's actually kind of one of the core principles of my book, Overcome Yourself. Because we think that we've got to overcome something. And so that's kind of like, I guess, like my hook where, and then through the book, you realize, oh, there's really nothing to overcome. You just have to it's about shifting your perspective and looking at what you thought was your greatest weakness as your greatest strength, actually. Right. So do you feel like that's more what embracing yourself is? And can you talk a little bit more about what that meant for you?
Sure. When in my work, a lot of times, whether it's with my client base ranges from college freshmen. So sometimes I'm talking at orientation on a college freshman or on a college campus. And sometimes I'm working with Fortune 100 CEOs in the C-suite, but the narrative is the same. And I say the same thing. And I always joke that I am not sponsored by the American Dental Association, but it's going to sound like I am when I tell you this. But for me, what I want people to be able to do is at the end of the day, when you're brushing your teeth and you're looking in the mirror, I want you to recognize yourself in the choices that you made for that day. And when we embrace who we are, it's easier to live an authentic life. And it's easier to recognize ourselves even on the days where we make decisions we aren't the most proud of. If we can recognize ourselves somewhere in that decision, we can respond to and learn from that decision better than if we make a decision that we are not proud of that also was when we were trying to be a performative version of someone else.
Wow. Wow. And then, so is that what you mean with embracing yourself, is coming into alignment with everything, right? Like what you're talking about is like an alignment between, so you're not living in that cognitive dissonance, right? You're not thinking one thing and doing another. So there's some kind of alignment there, right?
You take the definition of success and you personalize it and you internalize what success looks like for yourself. And you would say, you know, you and I would sit down and I would say, Nicole, what's success look like for you? Because the problem is lots of folks are operating with an external definition of success that has been shoved upon them by cultural norms and cultural expectations. So then when people live this life of, you know, success on paper, they arrive at certain destinations and they look around and they go, I don't even care that I'm here. I don't want to be here. I wasted all this gas traveling to a place I don't want to be. And Lord knows with gas prices, nobody wants to waste that, right? So the emotional energy it takes to be successful by someone else's decision will drain you far more than the emotional energy it takes to pour into your authentic definition of success. So it is alignment. It's about internalizing the right pieces of the messages around you. Not every message that's thrust upon you is true or accurate or applicable. And when you embrace who you are, you can hear a message and say, oh, that is interesting for someone else. That is relevant for someone else, but it doesn't apply to the narrative I'm writing about my life.
Wow. And so I want to go back to something you said in the beginning. I want to tie this back into neurotransmitters, because I had to get that in order before I was able to really go on this alignment journey. So like I had a vitamin deficiency that was causing a lot of issues. And I've been struggling with depression and anxiety all my life. So I've heard neurotransmitters. We talk about serotonin. We talk about dopamine. Can you kind of give me a breakdown of what that, you know, you said you had some favorites. So can you throw those at me and kind of explain that a little bit more?
Well, I think I can. Maybe what would be the most useful is to talk about the misnomers, particularly about dopamine. Because there are a lot of people that are operating with the wrong message about dopamine. And if we can clarify this for your listeners, I guarantee you it will change a lot of things for them. So let's do that and see if that gets you what you want. And if it doesn't, then we will have one whole episode called Dr. Erika Talks Neurotransmitters. Send in all your questions. No. So there's recent research about dopamine that's really important. And it is revolutionizing what we know about how dopamine contributes. So we know dopamine is tied to our reward center, but what a lot of people don't realize is dopamine cannot be satisfied. So for a long time, especially as social media and research around social media was getting more popular and we were looking at it, we were saying things like you get a little dopamine hit. That term has been thrown around a ton. That you get a dopamine hit when someone likes your Instagram story, or you get a dopamine hit when someone shares your Facebook feed, or whatever it is. The reality is your dopamine can't be satisfied. All dopamine wants is more dopamine. Dopamine is a pursuant neurotransmitter. And if you are a highly dopaminergic person, high levels of dopamine, you are not going to have a sense of satisfaction about what you're doing unless you can shift into the here and now and leverage some of those other neurotransmitters. So people who are I use this example a lot. People who are serial daters. We all know this person that is so interested in the pursuit of a new relationship. And as soon as they start dating that person, they are no longer interested in that person and they're interested in another pursuit. That is dopamine. That is dopamine pursuing new interests. So if you're highly dopaminergic and you don't know how to leverage the rest of what's going on in your brain, you will genuinely not be capable of having true satisfaction. You might have moments of pleasure, but pleasure is not a sustainable emotion. Pleasure is not a sustainable existence. You can't live a life of perpetual pleasure. It doesn't work. So if we are looking for satisfaction, we have to work with dopamine, which is aggressive and kind of a bully and really important. Dopamine is really important because it invites us to pursue new things, and that's great. But we have to know that we have to have some sort of metric to recognize achievement so that the dopamine doesn't challenge us so much or doesn't push us so much that we never notice when we achieve the things that we are pursuing. So dopamine cannot be satisfied. You have to work to recognize your achievements, and you have to sit in that space for a second and say, oh, 6 months ago, I set out to do this thing. Now I've done it. Instead of saying, oh, I've accomplished a task, I'm going to keep going. You have to work within your cognitive space to sit in the here and now and focus on the achievement before the pursuit of the next one.
Yeah, before you move your goalpost. And we are so guilty, like as entrepreneurs, as ND entrepreneurs, of moving that goalpost. Like we see, oh, my goal was 10, I'm at 9. Let's see, can I do 15? And it's like, wait a second, right? That's huge. And so that there's science. As a matter of fact, the first almost half of my book was me figuring out the huge role that learning to practice gratitude had on me. And what I'm basically figuring out what you're saying, like I figured it out in my own way, was learning to stop and appreciate what was around me. Because if not, it's like this hunger and it just won't go away. And it doesn't matter what you do, there's just this hunger for more. And so when I started practicing gratitude, and it was like, just stop and write down 3 things that you're grateful for, just 3 things. Just that's all you've got to do. And the reframe that happens in your brain is just absolutely amazing. And so like learning from you that this is science. This isn't just something I stumbled into and I was like, oh, what a coincidence. There's some science behind this. I'm so excited. What do you think about practicing gratitude? Is that a way that you measure accomplishments, I guess? Is that what you recommend?
Well, so I would say measuring accomplishments and gratitude are in 2 different categories. I think they're both really important. There's a ton of research actually around the impact of gratitude, and gratitude is aggressively correlational with success in a lot of different metrics. So gratitude is interesting because most of us would consider gratitude a reflective practice. Mm-hmm. But the reality is it's super active and it's super futuristic. Here's why. When we are grateful for someone's time, I'm grateful for your invitation to come be a part of this, it begins to shape future decisions based on how it enhances my working knowledge of you as a person or my working knowledge of our relationship. So gratitude informs future decisions. So it isn't just a passive reflective thing, but typically, again, we would say, we're reflecting on something that is past tense that has happened, but it also helps us assess the relationships we have or the resources that we have as we consider future decisions, because we're making decisions constantly. We make 11 billion decisions a day, right? That's a technical term, 11 billion. You can all
love it. I love it.
It's completely made up and I use it all the time. So gratitude helps ground us in a different kind of awareness. And it plays into, so there are different neurological channels in our brain that directly contribute to satisfaction. And one of them is about focus, and gratitude calls us into a space to tune out some of that external chaos and take a moment of presence. It also is one of the most powerful, sustainable, positive emotions that we experience. Gratitude and love are the most sustainable, pretty traditionally recognized as the most sustainable feelings of positive nature that human beings can experience. Because we also take gratitude, and when we choose to be grateful, we carry it further. And we usually will, one of the best ways to impact that positive nature and to carry it even further is to express your gratitude to someone else, because then you have the benefit of verbalizing the gratitude, but also positively impacting that person that you're grateful for. So gratitude has a lot of really great working components that people have never thought about, or most people have never thought about. They just send their thank you text or write their thank you email or thank you notes. For those of us who are old school and still write thank you notes in cursive and do the things. But gratitude isn't just fluffy positive psychology about feeling good for a moment. There are an abundance of studies on what gratitude does in other ways and how it serves us. Because here's the deal. I told you part of the area that I work in is, along with neuroscience and doing keynotes on neuroscience of satisfaction, I talk about the intersection of authenticity and human evolution. So from an evolutionary perspective, we are socially wired beings. We got here because we did it together. The beings that weren't willing to build relationships and collaborate didn't make it. Gratitude is a foundational component of effective relationships and sustainable collaboration across the long haul.
That is amazing. And I love how we talked earlier how pleasure is not sustainable. That's not a feeling that we can live in, but gratitude is. And it's that's very interesting because they're kind of, I guess, not related, but there's, I guess, in a realm where there's like a happiness. But that's one of the things I talk about in my book is I'm like, I stopped trying to be happy because I realized that that's like chasing a rainbow. There's no we can be happy, but we can live in joy, right? And there's like this underlying joy. So even if we're sad, even if we're angry, there's like this joy, there's like this hope. And so I guess there's like this gratitude underlying that kind of helps us, like you're saying, it's futuristic. Like there's you brought up so many points and I'm like, oh my God, I hadn't even thought of that. I could write another book. Yeah, that is amazing. I love how you talk about how gratitude is active and it's helping you shape your decisions. I'll tell you, when I started really practicing, and it, like I said, it was just, when I say practicing gratitude, literally writing down 3 things, and going through it. Because sometimes like the first day it's easy, then the second day, and then you're like 2 weeks in and you're like, what the heck else am I going to write down here? But that's where the magic happens, right? Is looking for those things and finding things that you never thought of. And so, and it changes your perspective. Like even walking around, I felt like things were brighter. I felt like I noticed more things. I could see things. I'm driving and I'm like, I never noticed that before. And there's just like this, your presence, like everything changes. And it's just like a tiny little shift in perspective. And it touched so many areas of my life.
And one of the secrets to tie together some of the things we've been talking about is gratitude helps quiet dopamine. Because when you are grateful for what is, you can be less focused on what is next.
Yes.
So it's how you can create some of that balance and dynamic. Now, I do want to say something that I also think is really incredibly important, which is there is a huge difference between practicing gratitude and trying to employ toxic positivity. Right? Because toxic positivity is incredibly detrimental. Toxic positivity, if you're listening and you're like, what does that term even mean? Toxic positivity is the idea that when someone is experiencing a challenge, or we do this to ourselves sometimes, or some people are conditioned to do this, we say it could be worse. And then we fill in, something dramatic and terrible. The purpose of toxic positivity when it's employed is generally because someone's circumstances are making me uncomfortable. So I have to dilute them so that I'm not uncomfortable. So to dilute them, I say, well, Nicole, it could be worse. And then I insert some trauma. What that does is that minimizes your experience as a human. That tells you your feelings are okay, but there are bigger, worse feelings to consider. That is incredibly problematic. So when there is a culture of toxic positivity, which we see in a lot of places, I see it in workplaces a lot, I see it in social media a lot, I see a lot of this, it could be worse mindset. The problem is when we dilute someone else's experience in life, we are telling them that they have lesser value than someone who has a bigger challenge. And that's not the message that most people want to send, but we are telling them that because we are uncomfortable. So instead of doing the it could be worse, we need to change how we respond when someone is having a major issue. So toxic positivity and gratitude are not the same. And there are times, my husband went through emergency chemo when we had 2 tiny babies, and there were lots of people who tried to tell me it could be worse and finish that statement. And I wanted to sucker punch all of them because we were living somebody else's version of it could be worse. And those people were uncomfortable by the reality of my life and my existence. So they tried to dilute it so that they could feel more comfortable. That is not how you care for and support other people. And remember, we're social beings that are here to invest in and care for each other. That's how we get through this. So when people would remind me what to be grateful for, expressing negative emotions, having tough moments doesn't mean you're not grateful. And when we don't recognize the whole spectrum of emotions, we compromise so many other things. So from a cognitive standpoint, when you suppress emotions, and we're mostly programmed to suppress negative emotions when we're in social settings because we don't want to make other people uncomfortable, or they've told us that our circumstances make them uncomfortable. But when you suppress emotions, you compromise your memory, your ability to draw up old memories and to add new ones. So if you're in a professional environment and you're suppressing your emotions all the time, you are also going to have to work a lot harder to remember what you did in the meeting last week. And next week, you'll have to work a lot harder to remember what we talked about today. So emotional suppression compromises our cognitive ability to draw up past memories and to add new memories to the tank.
And that's kind of huge also. Hold on, because I'm just getting like this huge like aha moment.
You're all over the place right now.
Yes, but a lot of, you know, ND people, especially like ADHD, we talk about having issues with short-term memory, right? Like not being able to remember, like our RAM is not big enough. What if it's a combination of this? What if we are suppressing emotions, we're masking, and that's why we can't remember something, right? So like there's like even science behind that, where if you just kind of express yourself, it might be easier to remember things. That's insane.
And part of why I love authenticity so much is when you choose to be authentic, you stop suppressing your existence.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Dr. Erika, this is huge. Like this is big. Like this is like important research. We got to talk more about this stuff. Wow. Like I'm blown away. I'm so excited by this conversation. Like I'm really excited that I kind of like I said, I stumbled into this and I'm like, this is amazing. Even with like, I was reading another book, The Confidence Code. And I know we could just get into a whole nother conversation about this. Okay, so, but while we, let's wrap up this conversation. We can definitely do another episode later on. How can we stay in touch with you?
Oh, well, you can come find, the most fun place to find me is on Instagram, because that's where you see all the glitter and the 9 different pair of glasses that I have that rotate heavily in my space. My children help me shop for glasses. They're all covered in glitter, and everyone thinks it's because I have 2 daughters that are in early elementary school, but it's actually because I really like glitter. So, so I have it there because that. So my Instagram handle is @consultant Barbie. And that's because as much as there are some challenges with body image and other things with Barbie, and certainly Barbie has evolved a lot in her diversity of friendships and other things, Barbie went to space in pink glitter and everyone was on board with it. So to me, if you can authentically exist in pink glitter in outer space with NASA, you are doing something all right. So I love that authenticity that I see in Barbie and all the ways that she has existed in all her vibrant shades of pink and aggressive glitter across the years. So @consultant Barbie is where you can find me on Instagram. There's also sorts of content there in various professional development spaces. And certainly if you hear this and you have questions, just send me a note. I read everything that comes my way and I delete all the spam, but I respond to everything else.
Awesome. And you have a series coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I do a leadership series. It's a 6-week cohort and it is in authentic leadership. So we look at leadership in a lot of different ways and we take that lens of leadership, because there's no one right way to lead, right? If there was, there'd only be one book. There are a lot of wrong ways to lead and there are a lot of performative ways to lead, but we dig into, from an authentic standpoint, what does leadership look like for you as an individual with your definition of success in mind and the type of impact you want to have as a leader. So that's a 6-week course. It comes with weekly content and a bunch of other things that it includes. During the course, 2 individual 30-minute coaching sessions. But for your listeners, I will throw in a free 3rd 30-minute coaching session for anyone who is a listener of this podcast who comes to that series. So that series will happen from the middle of September through the end of October, and registration starts August 1st.
Awesome. And all those links will be in the show notes or in the comments, wherever it is that you are watching this. Okay, this has been absolutely incredible, Dr. Erika. Do you have any final notes, words of wisdom, like a your best tip, I guess? Pick one.
Oh, golly. Here's the secret.
Okay.
Life is hard enough without you making it harder by being performative and trying to be an imitation of someone else. The
Can I quote
best
you?
you
Oh, no.
can. The best imitation is still an imitation.
Love it. Just be you, man. Just be you.
Right.
And you know what? It's when I started like learning about business, right? They teach you and then you put out your sales posts and you just talk about business, but that doesn't work. It's not until you let your guard down and you really let people in and you know, you don't have to like show them yourself naked, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like sharing your stories, sharing those challenges, like those things that really scare you to talk about. You're like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. That is that's what creates those connections, and that's what connects us to each other, right? Like we're like, oh my God, she's not perfect and I don't have to be. I want to hang out with her. So I think that's amazing. I think it's
And
awesome.
when we show up transparently and we exist as ourselves, as entrepreneurs, if someone wants to work with us, we know they want to work with us for who we are and not who they think we're supposed to be or have been in the past. So if someone listens to this and says, wow, you have a weird fixation on neurotransmitters, but you know how to convert dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin into effective meetings, and I am a new leader and I want to have effective meetings, and your energy is energy that I want, then I know when they come find me for individual coaching and consulting, which I also do, that they want the type of coach and consultant that I am. If you don't want this, listener, I am always this. So I am not for you, and that is okay. I want you to have what you need, and if I show up transparently as this all the time, then you know if I'm what you need.
Yeah. And effective marketing pulls in the right people, but it also pushes away the wrong people.
Yeah, the whole world is not your target audience.
Yeah, and they shouldn't be. It's so funny. This is the last thing. I just read an article this morning about this man who teaches calculus. And by one, thing led to another, and he lost his business. And he was like, I'm just going to end it all. And he's like, wait, one more thing. Let's try one more thing. And this dude, where does my target audience hang out? College students. He started uploading his math lessons on Pornhub. And he got over 7,000 subscribers because he found where his ideal audience already was, and he gave them the content there. So he never takes anything off, but he found his ideal audience and he gave them what they needed, and people subscribed, and he was able to revive his company. So like literally finding your ideal audience. I know it's totally random, but I just thought that was hilarious. And I was like, oh my God, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. So he's like, I'm not uploading videos there anymore. But like he found them where they were, and he was just himself. He didn't take off his anything. He was just like, here's my video in his little gray sweater. And like he made his business work. So I just thought that was so funny.
And like always all the successes hit differently when you did them authentically, when you did it as yourself. And so that's
yes. So that's, and like these people ended up reaching out to him and buying his courses outside of that, but they found him. So that's just a lesson in really like thinking about who your ideal audience is and really just catering to them. So thank you so much, Dr. Erika. This has been amazing. I'm so excited. We will definitely be doing another episode because like I've got so much to talk to you about. Thank you for being here. Anything that we forgot? We're good?
Oh, goodness. We'll just save it for the next episode. How about that?
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
You bet.